Hello, I'm Jay, owner of Volunteer Audio in Oliver Springs, Tennessee. I'm making a quick video to show you step-by-step how to install the new Soundstream Reserve V2 radio in your 2014 to 2023 Harley Davidson Road Glide, or as you see here, the new RG3. So hang out and I'll show you how to put this in, everything it takes to make it work just like you expect it to. So the first step, we want to protect our fender on our motorcycle. If we drop a screwdriver, we drop a bolt, we don't want it to dent or chip that fender. I'm going to use Harley's fender protector, but you could use a towel or something else to go over this front fender. All right, for my next step, I'm going to remove the windshield. There's going to be two fasteners on each side. This varies from bike to bike. In this case, it's a Phillips number 2. Sometimes it's an Allen head or even a Torx screwdriver that's needed. I'm just going to loosen all 4 of the bolts. By loosening them, I will be able to take the windshield out without risking dropping the windshield on the ground, and then I'll finish removing the bolts after I get the windshield out of the way. So just loosened all 4. Set it to the side. All right, so at this point, it's going to be really handy if you come up with some sort of bolt storage container. So as you take the bolts out, you can put them in individual compartments and make sure at the end that you've put them all back in. So I'm going to continue taking those 4 windshield bolts. There it is, the Phillips screw, all the way out. I'm going to keep each one of those screws and the little rubber bushing that's on them all together. So next step, I'm going to pop this upper vent panel off. If you push down on the painted portion of your fairing, you can actually just put your hand right underneath that panel. So you could use either a panel tool like I have in my hand, or just use your hand and lift up on it. By doing that, you're going to separate the vent and the upper part together, and you're not going to pull it loose and have to reassemble this whole thing. All right, so now that that's off, I want you to unplug each one of your side marker lights. They're actually up here at the top of the fairing. But you'll see they're zip tied to the outer fairing. Just press this little black connector in and pull it out. We're going to do that on both sides. All right, so now using your panel removal tool, I want you to push in and get on the inside of that factory grill, and we're going to pry it out just enough to release these 2 clips. So there's 2 plastic clips on this side and an ear that just slides under on the other side. So pulling out from the inside of the fairing, it's going to make it easy to get this off without breaking anything. So we're going to repeat that same process on the other side. All right, so now we're going to move to our side marker lights. You're going to need a 3/16 Allen head. With your 3/16 Allen head, we're just going to take the bolt out at the back of that marker light. Same thing on the other side. So now we're going to take a T25 Torx and we're going to remove the lowermost bolt between our inner and outer fairing here. Don't remove the top one. That one's going to keep your vent in place. You only have to remove the lower one. Do that on both sides. All right, so now we have everything removed that's holding the fairing on, except for the 2 Torx bolts that we actually exposed when we took our speaker grills off. So I'm going to remove one of them. Our fairing is not going to try to fall off until I remove the second one. So I'll take this one out. I'm going to go to the other side now. If you notice, I'm standing in front of the fairing. I'm holding it in place with my body while I remove the last bolt. That way there's no way it can fall off. All right, now that I removed the last bolt, we're just going to take the outer fairing. It's going to kind of lift and wiggle. We're going to take it off the bike, set it somewhere where it doesn't get damaged. All right, so the next step, we're going to actually unplug each one of the connectors off the back of our radio. So first, we're going to start with our factory GPS antenna. There's a little tab on the bottom you're just going to push up on. As you push up on it, it's going to release, and you can slide this antenna off that factory hole. Here's a better view of it. We're just pushing down on that little tab. When we do that, it lifts up the tab on the other side and releases it. All right, AM/FM antenna is very similar. There's a single push on the other side. We're going to push on it and then wiggle it out. Again, as you push it, you're going to see it lifts up. It's this button right here. Now our USB is a little easier to see. That's this chrome part with the black end. We're going to press down on its connector, same way. It's just this little black push. Slide it off. Same thing, as we push it, it lifts up. And this one confuses a lot of people. So this connector on the back of our radio has a single button right here that you have to push in. As you push it in, it lets this lever actually turn. As we rotate that lever, we've unplugged our factory radio. So at this point, we're only 4 volts away from having our radio out. All right, again, 3/16 Allen head. The same ones that we used on our side marker lights earlier. There were 4 bolts on the radio. We're gonna remove those. Take them most of the way out. You can leave them in the hole. You don't have to take them all the way out. That way you don't risk dropping them. All right, so now we're just going to take this bracket, lift up on our radio, set it over on our table. All right, so let's open up our V2 radio and see what we have in our box. Now this radio was bought from Volunteer Audio. As part of that, it was bought with the iDataLink Maestro module that's needed to put one of these radios in. This particular one is the RR2. When you buy it together at Volunteer Audio, we're going to pre-program, pre-update, and preset your thumb controls to the best possible layout. And then we're going to plug it into the harness so there's no mistakes made on your end. Because this plug will actually go in 4 different connectors. We want to make sure it's in the right one. So you're going to get that fully assembled. We're also going to get a bag of additional components in here. In here, we're going to have the USB cable that would be needed to do an update to the MRR2 if we plugged it into a computer. Now, this particular model also can be updated from Bluetooth with a phone app. So it's pretty cool. You don't actually need this, but we send it to you anyways because it comes with the module. You're going to have a new GPS antenna. So if you have a factory GPS antenna, you can use that, or you can install this new one. You're going to have a microphone. This microphone is actually included because it's part of the Apple CarPlay certification. They have to include it. But remember, this radio actually has built-in wireless headset connection. So you can do a Cardo or Sena headset, as well as any Bluetooth in-ear device, and connect and do a lot better job of talking to your voice assistant or other people on calls while riding down the road. Now, we're going to have a little bag with 4 little black bushings in it. I'm going to show you, if you don't take your bolt all the way out, sometimes you can reuse the ones that were in your other radio. Looks like in this case, they're staying stuck in. So that's why they send them to you. But that little black bushing actually goes in the hole where the bolts go in. All this does is actually isolate the 2 different metals, because we do have some stainless bolts and an aluminum chassis. They don't do well together without causing corrosion. So we'll take those little black bushings and we'll stick them on our bolts, and we'll put them back in our radio when we go to install it. Let's get our radio out of the box. All right, so this radio is very well packed with foam on each side. Let's pull it out of its bag. All right, so here's our radio. As you see, it's actually the exact same chassis size as our stock radio. It's going to bolt right in with no modification to the bike. It's got the same 4 holes where the bolts go. And you're just going to take the bolts with their bushings and you're going to stick them in the holes while you have it over here. We're going to do that with all 4. But one other thing you'll see is there's a bracket on top of the factory radio. We're going to transfer that over to our new radio. I like to set them beside each other because then I don't risk flipping this thing upside down or putting it on the wrong way and having to try to figure that out later. So it's just a T25 Torx driver. Take the 2 bolts out, right back in your new radio. Now you'll see on the back of the radio, we have a few new connections. We not only have the factory style connector, which is where our iDataLink Maestro module is going to plug in and its harness, but we have a blue GPS antenna that is actually located at the bottom. So you can plug in your factory antenna or the new one that came with it. We're going to have a USB above it marked USB where the factory, that chrome and black connector plugs in. Our factory antenna plugs into the antenna hole. And then we have 3 sets of RCA pre-outs. We have our front, rear, and subwoofer. They all have a weatherproof cover over on them the way it comes. Next, we'll have a few more connections. Our connector for Sirius XM. If you bought an SXV300 Sirius XM tuner, it's going to plug in here. We're also going to have an antenna coming out. That is actually part of rally mode. So this radio has a mode where you can connect up to, well, it's an infinite number of other radios together within 330 feet. It's actually about 100 meters or 100 yards. And as long as one of the radios is set up as the DJ and the other ones are set up as a listener, they're all going to play the same music at the same time. So all your friends can roll in together at bike night, blasting your music, showing off your new system on the same song. We have a connection here for our external microphone. And then we're going to have 2 connections here. We're going to have our camera positive trigger as well as our camera input. So this pink wire is interesting. Most radios don't work this way. Most are looking for a reverse input and then they show your camera. Well, there's no reverse on most of these bikes, and even if they have reverse, there's not an input to indicate. So this is actually going to power your camera anytime you pick the camera setting your backup camera setting on the radio, it's going to actually send power out and turn on that camera. The video is going to be fed back in through this yellow RCA. Last but not least, we have our USB high charge charging cable. I'll show you here in a few minutes how that goes into the bike. All right, let's go back over to the bike. I'll get all 4 of the bolts we need. We'll put it right back in. All right, so we've already swapped our bracket. Our 4 bolts are already in here. So we're simply going to drop this in. All right, so now we're just going to go ahead and start each one of the bolts. Go ahead and bolt it all the way in. So start them. Don't go all the way tight until you get them all in. At least started a few threads. We don't want to cross thread these, and by not tightening them, it's going to make that much, much better. So you're going to have to push down on the bolt to kind of push it through the bushing and into that hole. This is a beautiful radio. That black screen, the gloss black, is going to go great with this inner fairing. And the screen is just huge. All right, so next I'm going to show you how to route the high-speed charging USB-C into that factory storage pocket. Now to do that, we've got a couple things that we're going to have to remove. First off, I need to cut a zip tie that's going to my GPS antenna. By doing that, it's going to give me some slack and I can leave it on this speaker pod, but we're going to remove this speaker pod so we have easier access to run our cable. Next, we're going to unplug the speaker pod connector for this front speaker pod. So just unplug here. All right, so we're going to take our 3/16 Allen head, same one that we just removed the radio, and put it back in. We're going to remove 3 perimeter Allen heads from the speaker pod. Now we're going to remove the 2 upper speaker pod bolts. We're going to hold some pressure in on our speaker while we do it as we remove the last one because we don't want it to fall off. All right, so before I remove that all the way, there is a little Christmas tree retainer up here top that is holding our USB cable to the side of our speaker pod. I needed to pop that loose. Now I'll finish removing that bolt. All right, so now that that's out, we're going to take our speaker pod off and we're going to set it to the side. All right, so there's no need to remove the one on the other side, but this is going to give us access to a couple things. It's going to allow us to actually run our USB in a shorter method so that we have plenty of room. And what we're going to do is we're going to start by going under our radio. So come under the radio and through this bracket, like you see right here. So pull this out through this area. Now we're going to get to this retainer that holds that factory USB to the side of the storage pocket, and we're going to pop it loose. Next, we're going to push the grommet from that into the storage pocket, just enough that we can feed this USB-C into there also. Now, when you look at this grommet, you're going to see that it's the opposite way of the one that was in there from the factory. And what they've decided is they want us to just pop our factory USB into this channel. We're going to slide it all the way in. It's not the easiest thing to slide in. They've made it really tight, which is good. So once we get it pushed all the way into the channel, we're going to take this and we're just going to push it right into the top. All right, instead of using that Christmas tree retainer that's on here at the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and take a zip tie. I'm going to go through the hole where it used to be. I'm going to secure our cable over there. Once I've done that, I'm going to cut our zip tie and just flush cut it. We'll see about putting our speaker pod back on, but first, while we have the extra visual and you have the extra room, we can actually put our Datalink MRR right under here that's needed for the radio. This is that module. You notice they give us a good amount of lead to put this pretty much anywhere we would want in the fairing of the bike. Depending on if you're running an amp or not, there are going to be various places you can put it. I would always tell you to secure it up high. We want to do that because we don't want to let it just hang in there, because if you did that, any water that runs down the wiring is going to try to run into the module. It's pretty well weather resistant, but we don't want to fill it full of water. So I'm going to bring it up here toward the top, and I'm going to try to use a higher spot to mount it in under here. But first I'm going to feed it through and get everything plugged in. So plugging this into the radio. Next, we're going to take the factory connector and plug it back in to our new connector. right, so there's a pretty large void here and behind here. So this will be fine to stay here as our speaker pod goes back on. And then now we can also take our MRR, we can bring it underneath here. And you could do this a couple ways, but you could either zip tie it around, but really by the time you put your speaker pod back on, it's gonna stay right up here tall on top of all this wiring. It's not gonna fall in there. We'll start one of my upper bolts here. Bring it down enough that it holds everything in place. Put my second one in. We'll start these and then we'll put the other 3 in before we go any further. You're probably wondering why I did not cut the bushing off of the factory USB and why I just pushed it in the pocket. Well, first off, that cable is about $65 if you mess it up. And if you decide that you want to cut it, you're probably going to slice through the cable trying to cut off the factory grommet. I've tried it before on other scenarios, and I wouldn't recommend that you do that. All right, so now that I have those 3 bolts started, I'm going to go ahead and tighten them all up. Go ahead and take that factory USB. I want you to bring it over and I want you to plug it into the USB port, just making sure you have enough length. You should have. Now, in the case of this installed, it may be the same on yours. That little Christmas tree retainer is just too tight to move up. I don't want it to bounce off of our front speaker, so I'm just going to put a zip tie through this hole and zip tie the wire right up to the top of that pod. All right, so let's continue to plug in our other factory connectors. So we have our factory antenna here for our GPS. You're gonna actually put your little push pin facing upward and plug it in right here underneath the USB connection. Next, we're gonna find our factory antenna. In this case, it's one of those hidden antennas. We're gonna plug it into the one marked antenna, still with the button facing downward. Now, we're not installing Sirius XM on this bike. If you were, I would put that module under here just like you saw us do the MRR on the other side. And I would take my antenna and I'd put it right up here on top of this speaker pod location. It's a great place to put your GPS antenna, or it's a great place to put a Sirius XM antenna. You have a factory spot on the top of either one of those. All right, so from there on, we're not going to be putting in a backup camera. We're not going to mount the wireless or the wired mic on this one because we're going to use wireless in the future. So I'd take any of these additional cables, zip tie them up here to the side. So just that easy, we got the radio in. Now we're simply going to go back together. So I'm going to start by, well, don't forget this part. Plug in your front speaker pod. We unplugged it earlier to make room to be able to take it off. So plug it back in or you're not going to have that front speaker. Okay, now we're going to take our outer fairing. I'm going to put it back on. I'm going to start those 2 black torque screws that went in at the speaker while I'm holding the fairing in place. All right, so we're just going to take our fairing. In this case, it's an RG3, so we're going to bring the bottom of it above our support brackets. It's going to slide right into place. Get that one started. All right, everything's lining up well, so I'm going to go ahead and continue tightening this down. All right, so go ahead and plug in your side marker lights so we don't forget to do that later. Speaking of which, let's move to those lights and put our side bolts in. So again, our 3/16 Torx driver. All right, so we're going to take our Torx to go in the very bottom of our fairing. Make sure that we get it lined up. This is your T25. So if there's something going to be missing from your hardware, it's probably these. It seems to be the most likely that people forget to put them back in. That's why we put everything in a little bolt storage container. So at the end, when it's empty, we know that we have put everything back in where it went. Take your grill, putting this under, lining up your tabs, pressing it back in. Same thing on the other side. All right, so we want to take this lip, we want to feed it underneath our inner fairing. Everything lines up, and we're just going to push down. Everything is snapped in and lining up. I'm going to go ahead and start all of our windshield screws. Making sure that I leave my little rubber bushings on each one. All right, so let's start our windshield on one side. Grab each one of the little rubber bushings and slide them out on the bolts. Feeding your front of your windshield in first. Let's do the same thing on the other side now. All right, now we're going to continue to tighten them down. Now these don't go very tight. They have to go tight enough that you don't lose a windshield going down the road, but at the same time, if you over tight them, you do risk cracking the windshield. All right, our fairing is back together. Last step, we're going to pull our protective screen coating or cover off of our radio. And look how awesome that looks in our fairing. Let's turn our radio on. All right, so we're on FM with our hidden antenna. Like most, it picks up some of the stations when you have hidden antenna. All right, so let's go through real quick the sources that are on this radio. What makes it so special? First off, check out that 8.3-inch screen. It's a beautiful, vibrant screen. It also does wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, and it has built-in navigation. So we'll fire up our navigation. From here, we've got a lot of things that we can select. I'm going to go ahead and skip out of here and go out to something else. All right. And we can do all that from thumb controls. We also have custom gauges. There's about 60 different custom gauges you can go through and show on your bike. The only time this doesn't work is if you have a ThunderMax tuner. If you have a ThunderMax ECM, actually, these gauges will not work. They do come on and actively work while running if you have a stock ECM, and it does work if you have a tuner, as long as it's not currently in an auto-tune mode. But you can go through and select many, many different options. There are a ton of options that you can go through and change each one of these to whatever you want them to be. Now our second page of gauges is actually what I call our track pack gauges. So we've got our battery voltage, but here you have your 0 to 60 times, your quarter mile times. Really cool. You can see your mile per hour as well, all here on the same screen. So back out. We're also going to have what we call motorcycle info. Here you can see our tire pressure. You can see our battery voltage, EITMS status, and if we have a check engine light. You can also run through each one of the buttons on the handlebars and check things like your brakes, high beam, all of that's displayed here. All right, let's back out and go through a few more things. So this is one of the first radios that you could buy that actually has headset capability. So you can go through here to headset list, you can search and add your own Bluetooth device to add a headset, whether it be Sena, Cardo, or any in-ear Bluetooth device. Also go to device list and add a new phone. By doing that, we'll have our wireless CarPlay pop up on the screen. Yeah, we want to pair. Yeah, let's sync our contacts. Let's do CarPlay. I'm waiting on my phone to ask me about CarPlay. Let's use CarPlay. So here we are, wireless CarPlay coming up on screen. This radio is extremely fast at booting. This is something that happens very, very fast. Check out our maps. Oh, we just had a customer here earlier today from Canada. I was checking out where they lived. Looks like it'd take us about 22 hours to get there. All right, let's go across here and check out. We got Google Maps, we have Waze, we have Apple Maps. We also have all of our music that we want to listen to. What's awesome is we can fully control all of these screens through our right joystick on our thumb controls. Makes this very easy. We can also go through and do a split screen of our nav and our music right over here. Go back to Soundstream. Let's go through those functions again. So we had our custom gauges, our motorcycle info. It also does just standard Bluetooth audio and Bluetooth phone. It has a dedicated USB input. It does Sirius XM if you add that. And we talked a little bit earlier about rally mode, where you can actually connect an infinite amount of riders up to 330 feet away and play the same music as each other, which is pretty awesome. We also have a camera input if you decide to add a backup camera. This radio also has an amazing internal EQ. Let me go to settings and show you some of the audio settings. So we're going to have fader and balance. So one of the things, when you upgrade a factory GT or GTS radio and you properly flash it, you lose fader. This radio is going to give you all of that back and an amazing input signal that's just so much better than a flashed stock radio. On top of that, we're going to have a great EQ. So we have a 15-band digital EQ. We have a bunch of different presets that we can go through. We also have the ability to build a custom EQ. We can turn 3D surround on and off. Now I'll tell you, a lot of people have already said it. The first one we put in, the customer agreed. Flat with 3D surround sound sounded amazing. So we just simply did that and left from there. It sounded awesome. We also have front and rear crossovers. Let me go there. So we have independent front and rear speaker crossovers. So we can actually take some of the bass out of our front speakers and send more to our rear speakers to give us an even better full bassy response out of our system while protecting our speakers from frequencies they won't play, so it'll go even louder. This radio has so many options. I'm not going to take the time to bore you with all of them, but it does have the best screen in the industry, the largest one. It also has the most powerful internal amplifier, the strongest RCA outputs, the best EQ. It's amazing. The list just goes on and on. So with the device list ability to do wireless CarPlay and wireless Android Auto and wireless headsets, it's answered all the questions that all of us wanted, all the things we wanted to add to our bike. The only thing it will not do is wired headsets and a CB. Less than 1% of the riders use their CB, and they're not going to probably invest in the technology to add that. Wired headsets are not going to work because wireless is the future. This radio has everything you need to do any kind of wireless headset. And again, not just Sena or Cardo, but you can also do those very inexpensive in-ears like Apple AirPods or JBL in-ears, or even the really cheap like $10 ones you get at the convenience store. They'll all connect to it. So thank you for watching. I hope this video helped you. I hope it showed you how to install the radio. We're gonna have other videos where we go over a lot of the functionality. When you buy this from Volunteer Audio, you're gonna get a card in the box that tells you how the thumb controls are laid out. So we'll go over what all of those thumb controls do. It's gonna make it easy on you. In this case, it's an MRR2, so if you don't like that layout, I think we've already picked the best one, but if you wanna change it, you can connect with your phone via an app. We've got another video showing you how to do that. And you can remap these buttons to do any of the functions that you want or change them to wherever you want. It's very, very cool. Thank you for watching. Like this video. By doing it, it moves us up in search results. It helps us a lot. And I thank you for watching the video and clicking that like button. Subscribe to our YouTube. Follow us on Facebook to find out the latest in Harley audio, how to install it, how to use it, and make sure it's the right product before you buy it. You can also watch a lot of our install videos where we just do installs here at the shop, show you some highlights, walkaways. We have special guests. I think you'll really get a lot out of it. So just click that subscribe button now, and you'll be one of the first to see our new videos. Thank you so much for watching. If you have questions, if you want to know more about the V2 radio, and you want to know how it would work in your bike, and you want to speak to someone, give us a call at 1-844-30-AUDIO. Our knowledgeable sales and tech support staff would love to talk to you. We also have awesome plug-and-play amp and speaker kits at volunteeraudio.com. That's where you can buy the radio, all the options that you saw that came with it here, or any amp and speaker kit to go along with it. They're all plug-and-play, easy to install, and you can follow our step-by-step videos at the top of the page at volunteeraudio.com. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, God bless.